My husband's mistress thought she won, but the baby I carried changed everything. Please stay with me as I tell my story. And please, do not forget to support our channel by subscribing to our channel, liking our videos, and sharing your loved ones. Your support means the world to us. Now to our story. Poke. My husband's mistress thought she had taken everything from me, my marriage, my home, my dignity. But what she didn't know was that the baby I carried would change everything. Stick with me while I share my story. And if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Rachel, and I am 29 years old. I married Ethan when I was 24. He was 32 back then, charming and kind, or at least that's what I believed. We met at a friend's wedding, and it felt like a fairy tale. He was the man who could make anyone laugh, and I fell for him quickly. After dating for 2 years, we married, thinking we were building a life filled with love and dreams. One dream was always clear. We wanted children. From the beginning of our marriage, I imagined little feet running around our house, laughter filling the rooms, and late nights holding a baby in my arms. But it wasn't easy for us. Month after month, disappointment followed. I cried silently in the bathroom while Ethan tried to comfort me, though I could see frustration in his eyes too. Doctor visits became routine, and every negative test broke a small piece of my heart. For years, I lived with the fear that I would never be a mother. Friends around me were celebrating baby showers, and I was smiling through tears, pretending to be happy while my own arms remained empty. Ethan assured me we had time, that miracles happened, but I could sense him pulling away little by little each time hope slipped through our fingers. Then, when I least expected it, everything changed. After almost 5 years of trying, I took a test one morning, not even expecting good news. But there it was, 2 lines. I stared at it in shock, then checked again and again. My hands shook as I whispered, "I'm finally pregnant." Tears streamed down my face, not of sadness this time, but of overwhelming joy. I pressed my hand against my stomach, imagining the tiny life growing inside me. That day, I waited for Ethan to come home, my heart racing with excitement. I had planned a small surprise. I placed the test in a little box and wrapped it with a blue ribbon. When he walked through the door, tired from work, I greeted him with a smile I hadn't felt in years. He opened the box, looked at the test, and for a moment, I saw a spark in his eyes I thought was lost forever. For the first time in years, I believed our marriage could be healed. I believed the baby we prayed for would finally bring us closer, that our love would grow stronger. But little did I know, while I was holding on to hope, Ethan was already slipping away into someone else's arms. After the day I told Ethan about the baby, I expected things between us to change for the better. I thought he would be more caring, more present, and excited to share this journey with me. At first, he acted supportive, asking if I needed anything or if I was feeling sick, but slowly his warmth started to fade. Ethan began staying late at the office more often. He would call to say he had a meeting or that he was finishing paperwork. I wanted to believe him, so I didn't question much. I told myself he was just trying to earn more money for the baby, that he was stressed about becoming a father, and maybe he didn't know how to show it. But his habits started to bother me. Whenever he was home, his phone was always in his hand. If a message came, he would turn the screen away quickly or step into another room to answer it. When I asked who it was, he would smile and say it was just a work matter. I wanted to trust him, so I let it go. I convinced myself I was being too sensitive, that pregnancy hormones were making me insecure. At night, he stopped talking to me the way he used to. Instead of lying in bed and asking about my day, he would scroll on his phone until he fell asleep. Sometimes he even turned his back to me. I would reach for his hand, hoping he'd notice, but most of the time he didn't. I kept telling myself that once the baby was here, he would come around and everything would feel different. I didn't let his distance take away my happiness, at least not on the outside. I was glowing from the excitement of carrying life inside me. Every morning I would look in the mirror and smile at the changes I saw. I talked to the baby when I was alone, telling it how loved it already was. I believed this child would be the answer to the gap that had been growing between me and Ethan. When I tried to share my joy with him, he would nod politely, sometimes forcing a smile. If I placed his hand on my stomach, he would pull it away too soon, saying he was tired or had things on his mind. I tried to brush it off. I told myself he was just nervous about becoming a father. Deep down, though, I could feel something slipping away. There was a coldness in his eyes that I couldn't ignore. It was the kind of look that told me his thoughts were far from home, far from. Still, I chose to push those feelings aside. I wanted to believe love, and the baby we both had prayed for, would be enough to keep us together. I didn't know it then, but I was holding on to hope while he was already letting go. One evening, Ethan came home later than usual. I had made dinner and waited for him, but the food sat cold on the table. When he finally walked through the door, He smelled of perfume I didn't wear. My heart sank, but I kept quiet. I told myself I was imagining things, yet a small voice inside me whispered that something wasn't right. A few days later, I decided to do something I never thought I would. When he left his phone on the counter to shower, I picked it up. My hands trembled as I unlocked it, and what I found confirmed my worst fears. There were dozens of messages from someone named Vanessa. They weren't work-related. They were filled with love, with promises, with plans. One message read, "Can't wait until you're mine completely." I felt my knees weaken. My chest tightened so hard I could barely breathe. The man I had trusted, the man who was supposed to stand by me during the most important time of my life, was giving his heart to someone else. When Ethan came out of the shower, I was sitting on the bed, his phone in my hand. He froze the moment he saw my face. I asked him straight out, "Who is Vanessa?" There was no anger in my voice, just raw pain. At first, he tried to deny it, saying she was just a co-worker, but I showed him the messages. His shoulders slumped, and then he confessed. He said he had been seeing her for months. My world shattered in that instant. Months. All that time I thought he was busy with work. He had been with her. He admitted it without shame, as if it wasn't such a big deal. He said he didn't love me anymore, that things between us had changed. I couldn't believe the words coming from his mouth. I was carrying his child, and instead of standing by me, he had chosen someone else. As if the betrayal wasn't enough, a week later I met her face to face. Vanessa was younger, with a smug smile that cut through me. She didn't even try to hide her contempt. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "Ethan never loved you. You were just the wife on paper. I'm the one he really wants." I won. Her words burned deeper than any wound. She spoke as if my years of marriage, my sacrifices, my love meant nothing. My heart broke, but I refused to let her see me fall apart. I held my head high, even as my insides twisted. That night, alone in bed, I cried silently, clutching my stomach. My baby was innocent in all this. I told myself I had to be strong, not for Ethan, not for Vanessa, but for the life growing inside me. No matter what they tried to take from me, I would not let them take my strength as a mother. Not long after the truth came out, Ethan packed his bags. He didn't hesitate, didn't look back, didn't even try to comfort me as I stood there with tears streaming down my face. He told me he was moving in with Vanessa. Just like that, he left his pregnant wife alone, as if the vows we once made had no value at all. The house that once felt like home quickly turned into a cold, empty space. Every corner reminded me of what we used to share, and now those memories only hurt. I would wake up in the middle of the night reaching for him, only to find nothing but an empty side of the bed. The loneliness was crushing. My body was changing every day with the pregnancy, and instead of having my husband by my side, I was left to carry the weight on my own. My family stepped in when they saw how broken I was. My mother stayed with me often, cooking meals and reminding me I wasn't alone. My father, who rarely showed emotions, hugged me tighter than he ever had before. My sister called every day to check on me, making sure I was eating and resting. Their support held me together, but deep inside I felt humiliated. Everyone knew Ethan had walked away, and I felt like I was the one left with the shame. The worst part was how Vanessa acted. Instead of keeping things quiet, she flaunted the relationship like a trophy. She walked around town with Ethan by her side, holding his hand, laughing loudly, making sure everyone saw them together. She carried herself as if she had already taken my place, as if she wore some invisible crown that proved she had won. I heard whispers from neighbors, saw the looks people gave me, and each time it cut me deeper. Ethan didn't seem to care how much it hurt. He showed up once or twice, not to check on me, but to collect more of his belonging. He avoided looking at my stomach, avoided any conversation about the baby. His presence was cold, almost as if I were a stranger. And then he would leave again, running back to Vanessa like I no longer existed. There were nights I broke down completely, asking myself how I had become so replaceable. I had given him my best years, and in return, he left me during the moment I needed him most. The betrayal wasn't just about love. It was about being abandoned at the most vulnerable time of my life. Still, even in my darkest hours, I would place my hand over my belly and remind myself I wasn't truly alone. My baby was with me. That thought gave me enough strength to rise each morning, even when the world felt like it was laughing at my pain. It didn't take long before Vanessa made her next move. Having Ethan by her side wasn't enough for her. She wanted everything, including the house that still belonged to me. One afternoon, Ethan came over, not to see how I was doing, but to deliver her message. He stood in the living room, avoiding my eyes, and said, "Vanessa thinks it would be better if you moved out. She feels uncomfortable with you staying here." The words stung. This was my home, the place where I built my marriage, the place I prepared for my baby. Yet Vanessa, the woman who tore my family apart, was trying to push me out as if I were the intruder. I felt anger rise in me, but I stayed calm. I told Ethan firmly, "This is my house. I'm not leaving." He sighed, clearly frustrated, but I could tell he was only repeating her demands. A few days later, the pressure increased. Ethan showed up again, this time with papers in his hand. "It's time we end this," he said coldly. He wanted a divorce, claiming he needed a clean slate, a chance to start fresh with Vanessa. He spoke as if our years together had meant nothing, as if the vows we exchanged were just words that could be erased with a signature. I looked at the papers, my heart pounding, but I didn't sign. I refused to give Vanessa the satisfaction of seeing me pushed aside so easily. I told him, "You may have chosen her, but I'm still your wife. I won't let her dictate my life." My voice didn't shake, even though inside I felt like crumbling. Ethan grew irritated, saying I was making things harder than they needed to be. He insisted this was the right thing to do, that we both needed to move on. But I could see through his words. It wasn't about what was right, it was about Vanessa wanting to erase me completely. After he left, I sat on the couch with my hands on my stomach, speaking softly to my baby. I promised I would not be bullied out of the life I had built. Vanessa could take my husband, but she would not take my home or my dignity. Days turned into weeks, and the pressure never stopped. Ethan called often, repeating the same demands, each time sounding more desperate. Vanessa even showed up once, standing outside the house with a smile that dripped with arrogance. She didn't need to speak, her presence said it all. She believed she had already won, but I stayed firm. I refused to move out. I refused to sign away my marriage just because it was convenient for Vanessa wanted me erased, but I wasn't going to disappear. For the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of strength rising inside me, and I clung to it. I knew this was only the beginning of the battle. The day finally came when I went into labor. It was long and painful, but every moment was worth it when I heard the first cry of my baby boy. The nurse placed him in my arms, and I felt my entire world shift. I named him Noah. Looking at his tiny face, so perfect and innocent, I knew he was my reason to keep going. All the pain, all the betrayal, suddenly seemed smaller compared to the joy of holding him. Word spread quickly, and Ethan eventually showed up at the hospital. He didn't rush in with excitement like a proud father. Instead, he walked in slowly, almost hesitantly, as if he wasn't sure he belonged there. Behind him, in the hallway, I saw Vanessa waiting. She didn't dare step inside, but I could feel her presence through the glass window. She stood there with her arms crossed, glaring, like she was guarding her prize. Ethan came closer, his eyes darting between me and the baby. For a moment, he didn't speak. Then I offered Noah to him. He hesitated, but finally held his son. The change on his face was immediate. His hardened expression cracked, and I saw tears form in his eyes. He whispered softly, "He's beautiful." His voice broke in a way I hadn't heard in years. That moment told me everything. Vanessa might have stolen his attention, but she could never give him what I just had, his child. She could mock me, try to erase me, but she could never take away the bond between a father and his son. And she knew it. I looked toward the hallway and caught her watching through the glass, her face burning with fury as Ethan cradled Noah. The air in the room shifted. For the first time since Ethan had left me, I saw him truly conflicted. His grip on Noah was tender, and he didn't want to let go. But I also knew Vanessa wouldn't stand for it. She wanted all of him, without sharing even a piece of his heart. And in that moment, I realized she would never win completely. I didn't need to say a word. Holding Noah, I felt stronger than ever. My baby was my silent revenge. Without trying, he reminded Ethan of what he had walked away from. He showed him the family he had abandoned. And for Vanessa, every time she looked at Ethan with Noah, it would eat away at her pride. That night, when the room was quiet and Noah slept peacefully in my arms, I smiled through my exhaustion. My son had already changed everything. He gave me courage I didn't know I had. I whispered to him, promising that no matter what battles came, I would protect him with all I had. In that moment, I knew I wasn't broken anymore. I was stronger than ever. After Noah was born, things began to shift in ways I didn't expect. Ethan came by more often than I thought he would. At first, he said it was just to drop off supplies or check on how the baby was doing, but I could see the truth in his eyes. Every time he held Noah, there was a softness in him that he tried to hide. He stayed longer than he planned, rocking the baby or simply watching him sleep. Vanessa didn't take it well. Word reached me through whispers in town, and from the way she glared whenever I saw her. She couldn't stand the fact that Ethan wanted to be around his child. She accused him of still being tied to me, of keeping one foot in the life he had walked away from. I knew she hated that Noah connected us forever, something she could never undo no matter how hard she tried. Ethan started telling me about the fights they were having. Vanessa questioned him constantly, where he was, how long he stayed, why he needed to see Noah so often. She pressured him to cut all ties, to focus only on her and the life they were building. But the more she pushed, the more he pulled away. He couldn't ignore the bond he felt when he was with his son, and that drove her wild with jealousy. It showed in her actions. She began calling Ethan nonstop when he was at my house, her voice sharp and demanding through the phone. Once, she even drove by, honking her horn until he stepped outside. She wanted everyone to see that she was in control, but instead, she looked desperate. Her mask of confidence started to crack, and underneath it was nothing but insecurity. I stayed quiet through it all. I didn't argue with her, didn't rise to her taunts. I didn't need to. Her behavior spoke louder than anything I could ever say. Each time she lashed out, Ethan saw a little clearer who she really was. The more unstable she became, the more peaceful I tried to keep my home. I focused on Noah, giving him love and stability. I made sure Ethan saw the difference whenever he visited. With me, there was calm. With Vanessa, there was chaos. He couldn't hide the way he noticed. Vanessa, on the other hand, couldn't hide her fear. She began to unravel right in front of everyone. Friends who once admired her started whispering about her temper, about how she couldn't stand not being the center of attention. She wanted Ethan to erase me, but all she managed to do was push him further toward the very thing she feared, his connection to me through our child. In the end, I didn't have to fight her. She was destroying herself with her own jealousy, and every day it showed more clearly. It wasn't long before Ethan's visits to see Noah turned into longer conversations with me. At first, he only asked about the baby, but slowly he began talking about us. One evening, after holding Noah for nearly an hour, he set him down gently in the crib and turned to me with a look I hadn't seen in years. His voice was quiet when he said, "Rachel, I made a mistake." I didn't respond right away. I just stared at him, waiting for him to explain. He rubbed his hands together nervously, then went on. "Leaving you was the worst decision of my life. I thought Vanessa was what I wanted, but I was wrong. I should have been here with you, with our son." His words hung in the air, heavy and full of regret. Hearing him say those things might have once healed something inside me, but now, they only reopened old wounds. My mind raced back to the nights I cried alone, the days I carried Noah inside me while he was living with her, the cruel words Vanessa had thrown in my face. I remembered how he left without hesitation, how easily he abandoned me at the moment I needed him most. I shook my head and said firmly, "You don't get to come back now. You chose her. You left me when I was at my weakest. You let her humiliate me and stood by her side. That can't be erased." My voice didn't break, because I meant every word. Ethan stepped closer, desperation in his eyes. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want to try. Please, Rachel, I want my family back." He reached for my hand, but I pulled it away before he could touch me. That simple act made his shoulders sag, as if he knew deep down what my answer already was. For years, I had begged for his love, his loyalty, his support. And when it mattered most, he gave it all to someone else. Now he wanted to return, but my heart had changed. I wasn't the same woman who once believed his promises. I was stronger, and I had Noah to think about. I couldn't let him come back into my life and risk breaking me all over again. "I will never stop you from being Noah's father," I told him. "But you and I are over. There's no going back." The silence that followed was thick. He bowed his head, tears forming, but I didn't move toward him. He begged again, whispering, "Please." But this time I turned away. I wasn't cruel, but I was firm. My heart no longer belonged to him, and nothing he said could change that. The pain he caused had hardened me, and I wasn't going to let him undo the strength I had fought so hard to build. The cracks in Ethan and Vanessa's relationship became impossible to hide. Every time Ethan came to see Noah, arguments followed afterward. Neighbors told me they could hear shouting from their apartment, Vanessa accusing him of caring more about me and the baby than about her. She couldn't stand that he still showed up for Noah, and the jealousy ate her alive. Their fights grew worse with each passing week. Vanessa called him at all hours, demanding to know where he was. If he didn't answer right away, she accused him of sneaking back to me. The more she pushed, the colder he became toward her. What she had once used to lure him away, her confidence, her charm, was now replaced with anger and insecurity. Ethan began to see the difference between the peace he found near Noah and the constant chaos Vanessa created. One afternoon, Vanessa decided she needed to make a statement. She showed up at my doorstep without warning, dressed perfectly as if she wanted to remind me she was still the one on Ethan's arm. With a smirk, she said loudly, "You should stop dreaming. Ethan is mine, and he always will be." I didn't react the way she wanted. Instead, I stayed calm and simply said, "You can have him, but nothing changes the fact that he's Noah's father, and that will never be yours to control." My words seemed to cut deeper than any fight she'd had with Ethan, because for the first time, her smile faltered. She lashed out, shouting cruel things, but in her anger she exposed exactly who she was, bitter, insecure, and desperate. What she didn't realize was that Ethan had followed her. He stood a few feet behind, listening to every word. When she turned and saw him, her face went pale. He looked at her with disappointment so clear it couldn't be mistaken. "Enough, Vanessa," he said firmly. "This isn't who I thought you were." She tried to backtrack, tried to twist her words into something else, but it was too late. The mask had fallen, and Ethan saw the truth. All the manipulation, all the games, all the attempts to control every part of his life, it was right there in front of him. That day marked the beginning of their end. Ethan stopped defending her, stopped excusing her behavior. Their fights no longer ended with apologies. Instead, he pulled away more and more, until finally, Vanessa was left clinging to a relationship that was already dead. Her downfall wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, marked by the way people stopped respecting her, the way Ethan no longer looked at her with admiration. She had fought so hard to prove she had won, but in the end, she destroyed herself with her own bitterness. And for the first time, Ethan truly understood the difference between love and possession. Life slowly settled into a new rhythm, one where Ethan was no longer at the center of my world. My days were filled with Noah's laughter, his cries, and the quiet peace of rocking him to sleep. I learned how to be both mother and father, and though it wasn't easy, I carried the responsibility with pride. My family stood by me every step of the way. My mother helped with late-night feedings, my sister babysat when I needed rest, and my father reminded me with his quiet strength that I wasn't walking this path alone. Each small milestone with Noah felt like a victory. His first smile, his first laugh, the way his little hands wrapped around my finger, all of it reminded me that I had something precious, something worth fighting for. I began to realize that my life didn't end when Ethan left. It was only beginning in a different way, one that was stronger and more meaningful than anything I had before. Vanessa thought she had won when she took Ethan. She paraded around as if she had taken everything from me. But in truth, all she got was a man broken by his own choices, weighed down by guilt and regret. What I got was the best part of him, my son. Noah wasn't just my child. He was my blessing, my silent reminder that love can still come from pain. I embraced single motherhood not as a burden, but as a chance to create a life filled with love and security. I stopped comparing myself to anyone else, stopped caring about whispers from neighbors or pitying looks from strangers. They didn't live my life, and they didn't know the strength it took to stand back up after being torn down. Ethan still visited Noah, but I kept my distance. I no longer searched his eyes for the man I once loved. I no longer begged for attention or longed for the family we never had. I gave him space to be a father, but I made it clear that he was no longer my partner, no longer part of my heart. Late at night, when the house was quiet and Noah slept peacefully in his crib, I often found myself reflecting. Betrayal almost destroyed me. It broke my trust, my marriage, and the future I thought I had. But it also gave me a new reason to rise. Out of the ashes of that pain, I discovered a strength I never knew was inside me. Sometimes revenge isn't about getting even or making someone pay. Sometimes it's about living well, proving to yourself that you can thrive even when others expect you to crumble. I didn't need to shout my victory. It was right there in the life I was building, in every smile from Noah, in every step I took forward. My story didn't end in betrayal. It began in survival, and it continues in strength.